Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Manas to Mamas. First and foremost, we want to thank everyone truly, truly, truly from the bottom of our soul and our heart. The amount of positive feedback that we received on this podcast, it's it's still kind of like a dream. Like Michelle and I kind of had talked about this for a while, and we're like, well, we'll throw something online and see. It's probably only going to be like 7 people that are going to listen, and here we are. Um, we're not a big podcast at all. We're just starting, but we have around 80 plays on Spotify. But yes, from the bottom of our heart, thank you, thank you, thank you. We see all the DMs, all the text messages, all the shares, all the stories, all the likes, all the comments. We appreciate and acknowledge every single one of those messages. And again, we welcome you into our virtual mama village because it takes a village.
Yes.
So for today's episode, it is going to be a spotlight on Michelle Monique and I almost called him Diego Lorenz and Lionel Mateo or Leo Matthew. And kind of just her story, her birth story, pregnancy, delivery, all that fun stuff. So Michelle Monique, take it away.
Hello, hello. So yes, I had mentioned previously that my husband and we got married. That same month we said bye-bye birth control and let's just try. I've always mentioned to everyone that I talk to about motherhood, like there's nothing that sets you to be prepared for motherhood. People always think like I'm going to wait till I'm, financially at this place or in my career at this point or, whatever it may be, but you could be prepared. You can read all the books. You could do everything. Every pregnancy is different. Every kid is different. Every situation's different. I had 2 babies and that was like 2 completely different stories, as you guys will hear once we, I noticed the first thing I ever noticed different was that my coffee started to taste like burnt, like rancio. No sé cómo se dice en inglés. Like just rancio. Like it was just too
Like spoiled?
spoiled. Like I don't know. It just tasted weird to me to the point where it was like disgusting that I didn't want to drink it. And if you guys know me, I'm a coffee drinker. Like I drink at least 1 cup of coffee a day. I'm on my second cup because momhood is just that kind of day today. Technical difficulties. The boys were wrestling today. Like it's one of those days. So a second cup of coffee today. But I just remember driving to work and I'm like, well, this is weird. Like maybe my machine is dirty. Like I didn't know. And I remember that week, I was supposed to get my period that Saturday. And this was like Wednesday. And my husband were like preparing dinner together and he like passes by and he's like, oh, you're pregnant. And I'm like, what? And he's like, you just smell pregnant. And I'm like, ha ha ha, yeah, right. Like Saturday, I'm gonna get my period. Like, not thinking anything of it. And then Thursday, I remember it was a Thursday. We went to Target to do some errands, let Target tell us what we're gonna buy. And I passed by the pad section and I'm like, oh, I should probably restock. And Michael was like, oh, you should get a pregnancy test. So whatever. We leave the store. And then Friday, I had him like the whole day at work. I was like, maybe he's right. Like, I know it's supposed to be Saturday. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go buy a test, have it there. If I miss if I'm late, I'll just have it there, But I don't think so. Sunday, we're like up early with my goddaughter, letting her parents kind of nap or sleep in. And we're playing with her and the same, like, I just kept, my coffee just tasted weird. I had no morning sickness, no boob tenderness, nothing, 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 but just my coffee was just like so nasty to the point where like I didn't even drink coffee for like those days. And I remember like him on the bed with Ariel and I went to go pee and they say like pee first thing in the morning because that's the most accurate levels. So I remember just like having it in the bathroom. I took it. I didn't think anything of it, just kind of left it there, went out, brushed my teeth, washed my hands. And then she said something to me and I was like, oh yeah, Nina has that. So I go back to the restroom and I go get whatever she asked for it. And I'm like, oh, the test. So I go and I check and then I see it was like the digital one that said like pregnant. And I was like, what the heck? And like, mind you, it's just me, Michael, and Ariel in the room. Our compadres are like in the other room or downstairs, like knocked out. And I'm like, is this really like what? So I like closed it back or like put it back in the wrapper and I just left it there. And I was like, do I tell him? Like, am I supposed to surprise him? Like, you see on Instagram and like YouTube, like telling my husband I'm pregnant with all these surprises. But I was like, how do people go about like not telling them? So I was like, okay, I'm just going to wait for him to go to the bathroom and hopefully he sees it. But then as soon as he got up, I was like, look in the bathroom. And he's like, what is it? And then he like looked and he's like, no way. And I was like, but be quiet. Like, I'm still processing what happened. So Ariel, has no idea what's happening. She's like a baby at that point. And so, that's how we found out we were pregnant, together in our bathroom. I was just like, oh, wow. Like that happened so quick for us. And once again, I'm like super thankful. But the I remember going to the doctor and it was like right when COVID was kind of becoming a thing, not really. And I remember them telling us like, well, we're still not sure what's happening with COVID, but um as of right now, like your appointments are going to be one in person and then one or two over the phone or through Zoom. And I remember thinking to myself like, okay, this will be over in a couple of weeks, like no problem. And no, obviously COVID became COVID. And so I had to go my whole pregnancy, and even delivery through like COVID protocols. So my husband wasn't allowed to go to any of my appointments. It was just me, myself, and I at these appointments. And so as a first time mom, that was my normal. So a lot of people were like, oh my God, how can you do that? But I don't have anything else to compare it to because in none of my other appointments did Michael go with me. So I don't know, that's normal to me. But I had a very smooth pregnancy. I worked until pretty much close to the end. No like crazy symptoms. I had a little bit of sciatic pain, but nothing too crazy. I kept very active. Like I had a puppy at home. So he, if you guys know Achilles, he's a crazy energy freaking German Shepherd. So he just like required so much attention and walking and like activities that we were like hiking with him. We would walk every day in the evenings. Like we were just constantly moving. So that was fine. I think with Leo, I want to say I gained about 35 to like 42 pounds, give or take. It all kind of like fogs up because I had back-to-back pregnancies. So like I I remember hitting like 198, but I'm not sure like if that was with Leo also or just Diego. But regardless, like yeah, that about that much weight. Um and I remember, so I have a cousin who's 3 months older than I am. Shout out Brenda. I mean, 3 months younger than I am. 3 months younger than I am. And it just so happens to be that she got pregnant before we did. So her baby is 3 months older than Leo. I know it's a lot. It's just like, I don't know, it was meant to happen. Like she was my built-in best friend growing up because of that age gap that my sisters and I had. It just worked. Anytime people would see us, it was always like we were always together, and so it was really nice to like have that bond. And then it just so be that they're like 3 months and we're 3 months. Anyways, so I remember going through her pregnancy with her, and hearing her stories of like my belly and my back and like hearing her birth story. So I was like, oh my God, like she was in so much pain. And I remember like, oh my God, that's gonna be me. So I remember at that time it was still, it had transitioned to teaching through Zoom. And so I was at home. My husband was a teacher back then. So I was just kind of like, I would hang out with Achilles all day. And then once he would catch a break or for lunch, like, I would prep him lunch and then wait for him to kind of be done with his teaching duties. So I remember waking up Friday. I woke up normal, like mid morning. It's like 11 o'clock. I start feeling kind of like a backache, but kind of like when you like sleep wrong. So I was like, oh, this kind of like bugs me. So I was like, let me just like me voy a acostar and I'll be fine. And mind you, like he's in his office, Zoom teaching. Nobody knows anything, and I'm just
Well,
getting
you
like,
you did have a little bit of Braxton Hicks. Remember when you were dehydrated?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we thought
Sorry.
it was that. When you had texted me, we thought
Yeah.
it was Braxton Hicks.
Yeah, so I a couple weeks prior I had gotten like some cramping and some just like twinges of pain. So I was like, "Oh, I'm too early to go into labor." Went to the ER. Turns out I was dehydrated, so they're like, "Girl, go home, drink water, you're fine." So then this time around, it kind of felt like the same. So I was like, and I would lay down and I would be fine. So I remember, like, as the day went by, he comes out for lunch. I make us brunch. He goes back upstairs to teach again. And then I'm like, oh, this is getting, like, more uncomfortable. And then I call Julie and I'm like, hey. So this was still, like, the plan was for her to, like, she couldn't come into the room because this is like COVID. Only my husband could be in the room at the time. But she was gonna come down once we were home just to like meet the baby, be with us, and
We're going to be on baby duty. So she was due on Christmas Eve. And regardless of what's been going on in our lives, my sisters and my mom tend to spend Christmas together. Not that Christmas is like, ooh, we're not really religious. It's just more about being together. So I was like, all right, cool. Like, I'll just take 2 weeks off. I'll go down for Christmas, and either I'll meet the baby or we'll be on baby watch and I'll stay with the Keeleys and just welcome you guys when you get home, or, we'll figure it out. That was the plan all along. And on Friday, I was at work and she's texting me, like, oh, my back hurts. I think I'm getting Braxton Hicks. And I'm like, girl, drink your water, because she was not good at drinking her water. And then that's when you sent me the picture.
yeah. So I remember laying down, texting Julie, and I'm like, I'm getting really uncomfortable, but I lay down and I am fine. I'm drinking water, and I remember sending her like pictures of me, like this is my water, like this is how much I've drank. Um, I go to the bathroom and then there's like a chunk of my mucus plug comes out. And I'm like, oh shoot. Like I remember, they tell you like your mucus plug comes out and that doesn't mean like you have to rush to the hospital. It could be that day, it could be a couple weeks, it could be a couple months, like you'll be fine, your body's just preparing you for your stuff. So I'm like, okay. So then I send Julie the message and I'm like, hey, this came out. I think it's Braxton Hicks, but don't worry about it. If anything gets worse, then I'll message you. It's a 45-minute flight, so literally like
And
you'll
a little
make
side
it.
note, I used to volunteer at the labor, delivery, and postpartum recovery floor at our Pomona Valley Hospital. So I was very familiar with signs of labor, Braxton Hicks, mucus plugs, water breaking, like all that stuff, because that was that's what I had envisioned for myself, to be an OBGYN. So I was very familiar with that. That's why she was like sending me like, is this my plug? Is it Braxton Hicks? I think I just slept on.
Just like, you know what? Still like no one knows. Michael's still in the other office teaching. Obviously, I'm not gonna be like, hey babe, this is happening, and then it just be a false alarm. That evening, my compadres were gonna come because I just wanted sushi my whole pregnancy. Like that's all I wanted to eat every single week, to the point where like till this day my husband is sick of sushi. He will not go unless like someone else is coming with us. But he's like, yeah, basta con tu sushi. So my compadre was like, okay, we're gonna go spend the weekend with you guys. We'll pick up some all you can eat sushi. I don't like to go, but I will eat it because it's sushi. So I remember telling Julie, like, these pains better get it together because I'm trying to eat my sushi. Like, the whole day, todo lo que
Yeah.
pensaba era mi sushi, mi
The
sushi, mi
whole
sushi.
day, she's like, it can't be labor because I need my sushi. I'm gonna wait till after I eat my sushi, and if it still hurts, then I'll go. But I'm gonna eat my sushi. I've been thinking about my sushi all week. I was like, esta es su pinche sushi.
Literally, that's all I craved. Like, that was it. But So Michael's done with teaching, and I'm like, hey, so this is what's been going on. Like, I didn't text anybody, nothing. Like, the only person I text was Julie because, like Julie mentioned, like my mom is a very worried person, so I knew that if I messaged her that I was feeling this way, one, like I'm all the way like 100, not even, probably like for my mom's to my, that's like almost 200 miles maybe from where she works. So
So Michelle and Michael had bought a house pretty far away, and then
yeah,
my mom worked like about 35 miles in the opposite direction of our childhood home. So
yeah,
my mom was at work. So we agreed to not tell Mary anything. Sorry, mom, until we knew it was for real, because then she would dart 200
yeah.
miles to not even be able to go into the hospital.
Like you're only here like to go in, no people. Because my mom and my suegra were like, we're gonna be in the parking lot and find your window, and I'm like, you guys can't. Like, it's literally just the people going in. But anyways, we digress. So my compadres get there. I'm kind of just like, at that point it's already maybe like 8 o'clock, and I'm kind of just like, oh, it's getting more like I feel pressure sitting down. So I remember we're all sitting on our dining room table, we're eating, and I'm just like squirming, like I can't sit right because I just feel so much pressure. But everything I felt in my back, like it just literally felt like I had like slept wrong. That's like the best way I can explain it. So I remember just standing up and eating my sushi parada because no me podía sentar. And my comadre was like, well, how are you feeling? Like, you look really uncomfortable. And I'm like, my back hurts, but like, me acuesto y se me va. And she's like, well, maybe you should lay down. So we finished eating. They're watching a movie or playing Mario something. I don't remember. But I remember laying on the floor, and she tells Ariel, like, soba tu nina, mama, soba tu nina. So I'm laying down as like on all fours, and Ariel's like sobándome mi espalda. She brings me water and is like, I'm never one to be like, oh, I'm in pain. So it was kind of weird for her, like, why aren't you playing with me? Like, what's going on? And if you guys know Ariel, she is all about her Nino, like 100%. And while I was pregnant with Leo, like, she actually loved me. Like, she wanted to hug me. And Nina, I love you. So I was eating it all up. I was like, yes, yes, love me all you can. So it was just nice to have them there. And obviously, like, picking my comadre's brain, like, is this normal? Like, and she's like, well, with me, my water broke. So I don't know. But I was like, I haven't felt anything like
And
that.
remember, this is 2 weeks before she's due. So it's
Yes.
she's in that she's barely in that sweet spot, right? Those 2 weeks
Hmm.
before, 2 weeks after.
So I'm kind of just like still in denial. Like, I think it's Braxton Hicks. And she's like, why don't you go upstairs, like go into the dark, lay down, and maybe like that's what you need to just like rest a little bit. So I go upstairs by myself into the room, and I'm like, no matter what position I'm in, I'm just so uncomfortable, and I feel so much pressure in my back. And I remember like going upstairs, and I went to the bathroom, laid back down, and I was like, "Oh my god." So after a while Michael comes back, and then he's like, "Hey, how are you feeling?" And I'm like, "Well, I just feel very like just pressure." And then I was like having pains, but not really. I was like timing them on the app, and it was literally like one for 1 minute, and then not one for 25 minutes, and then one for 3 minutes, and then nothing for 45 minutes. So like the whole day it was just like weird. So I was like, I think this is Braxton Hicks. Like, it has to be. And so my comadre is like, well, why don't you just go get checked? Like, the worst thing they'll do is just send you back. And I had already gone, so I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not driving. What was it, like 20 minutes for me to come back? Like, no. No. And so I'm right there still being uncomfortable, and then I start feeling like I'm leaking a little bit. Like, I knew I wasn't peeing, but just like, so I put a panty liner, and I'm like, well, I'm not like soaking it. It's not a different color, but I don't know. So then Michael's like, that kind of concerns me. Let's call the hotline or the nurse advice. So she's like, just come on down. Let's just check that out. So we drive, And still, like, I'm not able to sit down. I'm just very uncomfortable. Like, the whole ride, I remember being in the front seat and like leaning onto my right side. Like, I couldn't sit straight. And I remember till this day, I see it and I can vividly remember, like, it's just this cracked road. And so you're like, blah, 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 and oh, it was so painful to like be seated and like feel the car moving. So we get to the hospital and it's COVID. So they say, well, dad wheeled me from, like, he parked the car, brought the wheelchair. We go and I'm like, hey, I'm 38 weeks pregnant. I'm having, these symptoms. And they're like, okay. And I remember, oh, bless this lady's heart. So Michael's there with the wheelchair. You have to like tell them how you're feeling outside before you go into like the waiting area. And there's this other elderly woman and her family. And I'm just like, okay, yeah, like this is what I'm feeling. And like, oh my God, oh my God. And, they're asking you all these questions. And I'm like, dude, like, I don't know. You're asking too many questions. Like, I'm in pain. And the little old lady looks at me and she's like, oh, someone's having a baby tonight. And I'm like, ay, señora, cállese. Like, yo aquí, she's like clapping, congratulations. And I'm like, oh my God, annoyed. So the nurse comes and she's like, well, you're going to go up to labor and delivery. They'll check you out. And then she tells Michael, go park the car and we'll have mom text you if it's like, if you're having a baby today. If not, then she'll meet you back down here. So the security goes and takes me, whatever. They ask you all these questions and the doctor comes to check if my water broke. And it's like, I think it was like a gel that they put on their gloves, to like, test if it's, your water that broke or if it's just like you peed. So as soon, like, he literally doesn't even like put his finger in me. He literally barely touches like the area and he's like, oh, yep, you're having a baby, mom. Call dad. So I remember like calling Michael and I'm like, okay, well, apparently my water broke. Was not like the movies, was not like, my comadres, what I had it like pictured comparing it to. Didn't even realize my water broke. And so he comes upstairs with all our bags and all our stuff and they're like, okay, well, you're gonna have a baby, mom. We were the only ones there like that night. So there was literally all the nurses are in the room, like prepping the bed, the baby stuff, prepping my stuff. Like one's asking me the intake questions. One is like preparing me for my IV. And I'm like, is this how it's supposed to go? Like, why is there so many people here? Because at one point, I think there was like 4 or 5 nurses just kind of doing different things. And then the intake one was like, don't worry, mom. Like, I know this is a lot of people, but it's like, you're the only mom on the floor. So we're kind of bored. And I'm like, okay, that kind of worried me, but cool. So when I got to the hospital, I was 4 centimeters dilated and 90% effaced. So in my brain, I'm like, oh, we're going to be here all night. Like 4, I got to get a 10. Like, oh gosh. So it's maybe like 10:30 by this time that we're admitted. Michael's in the room with me. And he's like, well, what do you want to do? Like, should we tell people you're here? And I was like, yeah, I think we should. Um, and so we have a group chat with my mom and my sisters, and then obviously with like the squad, which is like my brother-in-laws and my compadres. Which is literally like the people we need to update. And then his mom, we just called. So Michael's like calling everybody like, hey, guess what? We're at the hospital. Like, um, this is what we're doing. So we'll keep you updated as like they update us. So I remember like an hour and a half went by and they come and check me. And then she's like, okay, you're 5 centimeters. Like you're progressing. And I remember thinking like an hour and a half and I've only opened like one. Like, what the heck? We're going to be here forever. And by this time, my contractions weren't like too bad. Like, they were tolerable. I remember laying down and then the pain started kind of kicking up and I was like, ooh. I didn't go in with a birth plan. I wanted to go in and let my body do what it needed to do. I didn't want to get stuck or fixated on this idea of like no epidural or no meds and then like be kind of bummed if it didn't happen. So I just went in there saying, like, I'm gonna let my body tell me what I need and we'll go from there. Um, so we I remember like kind of feeling it a little bit to where I was like really uncomfortable. And I remember telling her, like, okay, well, what are my options? Like, I don't want the epidural just yet. Like, I feel fine. And she's like, oh, well, we could give you like IV meds. So I'm like, okay, let's try that. So I remember she like put the medicine and then automatically, like, she's still telling me the information about the medication. And I like dozed off. What felt for like 2 seconds, but Michael said it was like maybe 45 to an hour that I was able to like nap a little bit. But when I woke up, I literally, like, because it had dulled the pain so much, once it wore off, like, I felt the pain so bad. And I remember just waking up from the nap and like feeling so nauseous and dizzy. And I remember telling her, like, I have to pee. And she's like, okay, well, we'll let you get up to go to the bathroom. And Michael was helping me get up out of the bed. And I remember just like getting so nauseous that I like threw up. And I know it sounds nasty, but like, remember, I had sushi for dinner. So it was just a hot ass mess. So I'm over here like, oh my God, like I just threw up all over myself, the sheets, like, oh my God. And this nurse is like, yes, mom, you're in transition. Like, we're getting somewhere. Like, this is what we want. And I'm like, well, what is she talking about? Like, I literally just threw up everywhere. So we get myself cleaned up. Um, and then we lay back down. And I remember just like, I felt like pushing. Um, and just feeling so much pressure that I was like, babe, I think I want the epidural now. Like, I think I need it because I can't take this anymore. Like, it was hurting me so, so bad. Um, and so I remember like telling the nurse, and she's like, well, don't forget, like, you're going to ask for it now, but it still takes a little bit for the anesthesiologist to, like, do it actually. So I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine, but can I get it? So I'm right there, like, breathing through the pain and like, oh my God, this hurts. And then I just remember out of nowhere, like feeling like I had to push. And then I remember like hitting the button and I'm like, I have to push. And she's like, no, 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 don't push. Like, let me check you. And I was like, no, I have to push. I have to push. And she's like, okay, but like, let me check you because you don't want to like start pushing before. So I remember her checking me and she's like, oh, you're at 9.5. And so this is already like maybe 2 in the morning. And she's like, you do you still want the epidural? And I remember clearly the anesthesiologist is like, hi, I'm doctor. And she's like, no, she doesn't want it anymore. We don't need you. He just like shrugs his shoulders and walks out. So she's like, let's do practice pushes with me. And then once I feel you coming, like the baby actually coming, then we'll call the doctor. So I was like, okay. So we push for what seemed forever with her. And then she tells me, just stop. Stop, 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 stop. Like, let me get the doctor. And if you know, you know, like when you get the urge to push, you want nothing more than to just keep pushing. So when they tell you, like, you just have to stop, you're like, absolutely not. Like, no. Um, and I was like trying so hard not to push. And then I remember seeing the doctor like in cámara lenta, just walking in and like, hi, the doctor. And he's like putting his gloves and like suiting up and fixing everything on the tray and like prepping himself. And I'm over here like, can you hurry up? Like, I want to push this kid out so bad. Um, and I remember just being so exhausted. Like that at that point, I was like, I can't anymore. Um, and so he's like, okay, let's push one more time. And remember, like, stop when I tell you to stop. And so we kept pushing and pushing, and he's like, okay. Um, and I was like, I'm just tired. Like, I can't anymore. I can't. And then, like, Michael peeks over and he's like, babe, I could see his hair. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then once he told me that, I got so much energy and I was like, I'm getting this baby out of me. Um, and yeah, I like pushed and literally, like, I tell people the way that, like, sounds is literally what it feels like. Like, you're pushing and you have so much, like, pressure and, like, the ring of fire is so, so real. But like I just felt that, and then out of nowhere it was just like, like a little slimy fish, like bloop, bloop. And then Michael was like, babe, he's here. And so they like get him and put him on my shoulders, and it was like literally that moment of you don't know what love is until you hold your baby. It literally hits you like a ton of bricks. And no one else in the room existed. There was nothing else in the world that mattered but the love and happiness and relief that I felt having him in my arms finally, and having my husband there like to experience this all with me was just so magical. Having it just be us, letting it just be us for a couple of minutes without, people coming in and out or having people in the room. It was just really beautiful and very nice. So I went to the hospital at like 9:30, 10, and he was born by 3:30 in the morning. So very, very fast labor, very easy. They transferred me rooms after, and I got up to like pee within the hour. Like it was super fast. I felt fabulous. Like, yes, it burned, but it was like I had my baby. I just want to stare at him and hold him. So it was just wonderful. My nurse staff was just like great for being a first time mom. Like, yeah, he was very like textbook doctor in terms of like, okay, you do this, like lay on your back and push and labor. But for it being like a back labor, it was so fast that at the moment I was in pain. But then after I had him, I'm like, okay, people make it seem like this is way more difficult. Like for me, the pain wasn't that bad. He latched pretty quickly. Um, we were in and out of the hospital like, yeah, he was born at 3:30 in the morning, and then we got discharged like midnight that day, because I remember them telling us like, do you want to go home now or do you want to wait till the morning? And we were like, we're sick of these four walls. Like if I'm good, he's good, vámonos. And so yeah, we called everybody. Everyone was like seeing him. He passed all of his tests. I passed everything that needed to pass, and so we went home. It was midnight, so by the time we got home, like my mom, my sister Alyssa, and my suegros were the only ones awake to like recibirnos. And so it was like smooth. It was nice to just, like I said, it be just Michael and I, and then get home and like have that. It just so happens to be that like that Friday, someone at my mom's work got exposed to COVID and didn't tell them. So when she tested negative. So then she came Saturday and Sunday or no. Sunday to visit us and the baby, and then Monday they left home to go to work. Monday they're like, hey, everyone's been exposed, you guys have to retest. They test positive. So I'm like, oh my God, like it's fine, we'll test and we'll be fine. So I tested and I was negative. I was good. But then the idea of like, so mind you, this was early December. I had to spend the holidays without my family, without my mom, without my grandparents, without my sisters. Um, and then being a first time mom, like you just want your mom there, you want that comfort, that like support of your loved ones. And to have that kind of stripped from you because of COVID, it was like very, very, very hard on me. I remember before we left for Christmas, like I love my in-laws and they made this whole, like that whole experience so wonderful, because my suegra literally would like come and make me caldos and help me shower, help me bathe the baby. Like she was the rock star of it. Like she literally kept me going because I was like, I just miss my mom. And she's like, I know, mija, pero aquí estamos. Like, she'll be able to come. So it was nice, but at the same time, it was like, I just want my mom, my mom and my sisters and, my family, Um, so that was kind of the toughest part.
And I mean, we were all bummed too because Leo Matthew is our first actual like nephew. Michelle is the first like mom out of us three. And we had been looking forward to, being there to welcome them because we knew we couldn't go to the hospital. So on top of like not being able to be there, it was also hard to not be able to be together for Christmas. And at the same time, my mom's house sold. So they had to pack up our childhood home, and we weren't even able to be there for that.
Yeah. So I remember it was just like a lot going on emotionally, obviously physically, like you went 9 months growing this baby to like, okay, it's out of your body, and then you're like, whoa. So I remember just sitting there crying on Christmas, like I just want my mom. At Christmas, literally, we my in-laws used to live like a block, not even like a street away from us. So she was like, we're gonna have dinner here at the house, like you guys just come. So I remember, packing up the baby, bundling up, tapándome mis oídos, um, you know, literally like all bundled, and like having my little crying session. And Michael's like, we'll just go have dinner, we'll come back. Like something simple, you just need to like get out of the house. And it was literally just like my suegros, Michael, me, Leo, and my compadre now, Jonathan. And I remember getting the notification from the lab when I tested for COVID again, and it says positive. And I'm like, oh shit. And I remember looking at Michael and I'm like, I tested positive for COVID. Like, what the heck? I felt fine up until that point. Like, I was good. And so my suegra was like, well, you're already here. We'll just go get tested. It's fine. So I remember like we kind of wrapped up everything. We went home. I fell asleep. I wake up literally that madrugada and I feel like a truck ran me over. I couldn't even get myself out of the bed. I was like, it hit me and it hit me hard. On top of like literally just birthing a baby 2 weeks ago, the exhaustion of learning everything, like it was just it was so hard. My milk supply literally went down the drain. We had to like supplement feed him formula because I wasn't producing enough milk. But even then, like I would still kind of like roll over and like check on him, how he was doing. Luckily, Michael was a teacher back then, so he had like winter break off. So he was like, oh, I don't know what I would have done without him. But luckily he was there to like watch him and take care of him while I got better. I was down bad for like 2 days, and then I was like, okay, I feel better, I'm good. And luckily, like him or the baby didn't get COVID. So that kind of made that process even more or like longer because now I also had COVID. So Julie didn't want to come to see us because obviously, like, we don't want to get her sick. So that just kept like
Well, I
postponing how
wanted to
long.
come. I wanted to come, but I worked in the public sector, um, and our staff was already extremely low because we did work with clients directly. And he came 2 weeks early, so I wasn't like, because we work with the public, I had put in my request to be off the 2 weeks of between Christmas and New Year's, and it was a little bit too late to just shift it for staffing purposes. So it literally
Yeah.
killed me to not be there.
Yeah. So that was kind of the tougher part of that. But like I said, I was down bad for those 2 days and then I was fine. My milk supply came back. Everything was like fine. But it wasn't until maybe like, I want to say what, January, February,
What?
that you guys got to see him. Because then after like grandma
Oh, so I,
tested positive.
yeah, so they all tested positive, and I ended up not telling anyone I was going except you and Michael. And I went down the last weekend of January.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So then by this time everyone's already like negative. Julie comes and we're like, let's just text my or like FaceTime my mom or send her a picture of you with Leo. And then they're like, oh my God, you're there. So I went like a whole month and a half without seeing my family. So having them all come, I was like, yes, like I said, my suegra was amazing, and I love that she like le nace el alma to like help with babies. So she right away is like, "I'll help you shower them." I love that. My recovery was pretty smooth up until I got hemorrhoids. Maybe like a month in, not even after I got COVID. I 2 days maybe, like when he was 3 weeks old. I got hemorrhoids. Most painful thing of the whole entire process. Like I would rather give birth 100 times than to have hemorrhoids again. Um, Horrible, horrible, horrible. I had them for 3 months, so I was in pain. So much so that when I got pregnant again, I was more scared of getting hemorrhoids again than the labor. Um, and so that was like the hardest part, I guess, was like not necessarily having COVID, because yes, I was down bad, but I think it was just like the emotional roller coaster that came with like everyone getting COVID, like staggered and having that length of time without my family, and the hemorrhoids that literally were like, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. But breastfeeding came easy to us. Yeah, it was painful, and like obviously it's like it takes time for your milk to come in and for you guys to get the hang of it. Or anything like that. Like yeah, they were cracked and they would bleed, but you know, for how long I breastfed, like after a week of kind of doing all the ointments and like the pain and the soreness, I think it was like smooth ride for us. So yeah, just very happy that it was easy transition for us to like go from planning a family to getting pregnant to it being a smooth pregnancy, very smooth delivery, a little hiccups postpartum, but it was great. I think it sucks that after you give birth, it's like, okay, hit us up in 6 weeks, and you're kind of like, all right, you're good to go. Bye. My 6 week checkup was on Zoom. So they literally were like, you're good, you're good. They did like the depression screening, and they were like, okay, you're good. And I'm like, wait, this question, I like, don't feel that, but I do feel a little bit of anger. And they're like, oh, okay. Tell me more about that. So I did get diagnosed with postpartum rage after Leo, but the same, like I didn't advocate for myself that much. So it was kind of like when I got you're cleared to exercise, just exercise and journal and then check back. And then no one ever checked back with me. And I was like, well, I'm okay. I feel like I got it under control. But that kind of like if you don't stick up for yourself, like no one will. So I think that was like a learning experience, and definitely with my second, I'm like, okay, I really gotta vocalize how I'm feeling. Especially because it your body goes through so much change. Like you grow a baby for 9 months, and then like you have this baby, and then it's like poof, your hormones have to go back to everything. All in all, very thankful that it was easy. Like I said, my delivery was great. I was not afraid of delivery. Like if I could, I would have a lot of babies if that was the case, because it was just so smooth. But it it's something. Honestly, it's so amazing to see how fast your body responds to you being pregnant, how fast your body changes, and seeing the physical changes of it all. That it's like I did get stretch marks, I did gain weight, I did lose myself in motherhood, honestly. But obviously that'll be like a topic for another episode. But yeah, please watch out for, Zeke's story, Diego's story. This is just my story. This is what my journey to motherhood, pregnancy, and labor and delivery was. Obviously, for other people, it may be different. But yeah, that's a little bit of the road to Lionel Mateo. And honestly, I still can't believe he's mine. Every night, I think whoever's upstairs or whatever being, every spiritual thing I believe in, that he's mine. And now he's a crazy 2.5-year old with so much energy, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
And we have our little Leo Matthew. So there's gonna be, like Michelle said, there's gonna be future episodes where we talk about Diego Lorenzo's birth story, Ezekiel Roberts' birth story. And we're just gonna kind of chat. That's what this is about.
So yeah, like we mentioned in our previous episode, we want to keep up with our small business shout out. This one is a little bit closer to home, if you will, but our small business shout out goes to at Elevate Balloons 707. It is a balloon decorating service located up north. So they service the North Bay and Sonoma County. Um, she happens to be our cousin. Well, she's married to my cousin, but all in all, she's family. It's a little family business. It's a kind of like their side hustle. So apart from that, they both have their jobs, they have kids, and it's just what they come up with is just mind blowing. We'll leave them linked on our Instagram. We'll repost some of her stuff. And just leave her at somewhere on our Instagram, on Spotify, on YouTube as well, just so you guys can go check it out. Once again, like we mentioned, even if you visit the page, give it a follow, a like, look at it, message her, use her services or not. Just the fact that you're gaining traction on her page makes the world of a difference. So please, please, please go check it out. They do anything from parties, fundraisers, bachelorette parties, school events,
Graduations. I mean,
anything.
we do live in the Sonoma wine country. So if you find yourself coming up for a girls' weekend, a bachelorette, an anniversary, and you need bomb ass, beautiful, creative balloons, please hit up at Elevate Balloons 707.
We love you, Gloria, so, so much. And honestly, she's so creative. Like, sometimes she posts things, and I'm like, how did she come up with that? Because I would not have thought of all of that. And my
Well,
kid
that
just woke
being
up.
said,
So,
remember, you are amazing, you are beautiful, you are worthy, and you are enough. Have a good day, guys.